Today we recognize 27 heroes whose service, courage deserve our eternal gratitude. They were all faced with the decision of self-preservation or self-sacrifice. In all the cases, they responded with one word: bravery. This afternoon, the Los Angeles Police Department honors them with the department's 3 most prestigious awards: the Medal of Valor, Purple Heart, and the Medal for Preservation of Life. Later in the ceremony, you're going to hear these stories in detail, or as my late colleague Paul Harvey used to say, you'll hear the rest of the story. A narrative of a world-class police department whose men and women exhibit tremendous bravery, protecting the people of Los Angeles. I know you've already taken a few bites already, but I'm going to ask you to stop. Would you please stand for the LAPD's Honor Guard, followed by the singing of the national anthem by Officer Rosalind Curry.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Something like this does not happen in a vacuum. Today is no different. It would not be happening at all, if you would, without, how shall I put it, the hard work, the very hard work, and dedication of our host, the Los Angeles Police Foundation. In the last They are the personification of putting their money where their mouth is. Since 1998, the LAPF has donated $28 million to the LAPD. And we know exactly where that money's going: to fund equipment and technology upgrades, specialized training, community outreach, and youth programs. All of these would otherwise be unfunded, but for LAPF. As the largest source of private support for the LAPD, the LAPF is passionately dedicated to ensuring that Los Angeles remains America's safest major city. They are doing their part. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the chair of the Los Angeles Police Foundation, Jim Wyatt.
On behalf of the Los Angeles Police Foundation's Board of Directors, I want to welcome you to the Above and Beyond Awards ceremony. It is our privilege to be part of such a distinguished event, one that touches our hearts and makes us so proud of the men and women of the LAPD. For all the families, friends, and supporters who joined us this afternoon to honor and celebrate this remarkable occasion. We are glad that you are here. I would like to take a moment to thank Officer Nuit Umiansu, Executive Director Cecilia Glassman, and the dedicated staff of the Los Angeles Police Foundation for all their diligent efforts in organizing this event. Will you guys stand for a moment? Cecilia? To Chief Beck and the Police Commission, it is our pleasure to work with you in honoring these officers for their extraordinary acts of bravery and service. It means so much to our city to know that we are protected by such heroic individuals. We cannot thank them enough for their efforts in keeping the citizens of Los Angeles safe. Additionally, I would like to thank my fellow Los Angeles Police Foundation board members and ask them to rise to be recognized. And to all of our sponsors who have made it possible for us today to celebrate today's recipients, thank you for caring so much about them. To the 27 officers who are being recognized today, we salute you, we are proud of you, and we are honored to share this day with you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the man who leads the greatest police department in the world, Los Angeles Chief of Police, Charlie Beck.
First, some thanks, and again, thanks to my good friend Pete Demetrios, a stalwart gentleman if I've ever met one, and somebody that I have known for 25 years of my professional life, 30 plus. A little Pete Demetrios story. So when after about 1992, after the 1992 riots, I was the watch commander in Southeast, and you know, it was some very tumultuous times, to say the least. And it would be 3 in the morning, and you know, as all of those that work busy patrol divisions know, the watch commander's office would just be hair on fire, 10 things going at once. And the desk officer was Stacy. My desk officer was Stacy Lim at the time, and Stacy would come to me and say, "Hey, Demetrios out front wants to talk." And I would go, "What is he doing here? It's 3 in the morning. There's not a car on the road, except for Pete and that Bronco that he talked about." Which, you know, I always told the desk officers, whatever you do, do not look inside that Bronco. I don't want to know what's in there, and I certainly don't want you to know what's in there. So thank you, Pete. Thank you for many years. And then, thank you all for being here. You know, this is an important event to me. It's an important event to the Los Angeles Police Department. And the significance of it goes far beyond even the events that we will talk about today. It goes to the core of what being a Los Angeles police officer is about. And for all of you to take time out of your days to come and recognize the 27 heroes that we will talk about today is really extraordinary. And when we talk about 27 heroes, we're doing that for a reason. And the stories you hear are inspiring. And, you know, I won't preview them because Pete will do a very good job of detailing them to you. But the story is really not the story of an individual or an individual efforts. It is the story of the Los Angeles Police Department. Last year, after the ceremonies, I read in a media outlet about the recognition of what they called everyday heroes. An everyday hero, the common definition is an ordinary person put in extraordinary circumstances that does something heroic. And that's a good definition in ordinary circumstances, but I agree that these 27 men and women we're going to honor today are everyday heroes, but not because of that definition. I agree that they are heroes because this is what we do every day. And not only what we do as the Los Angeles Police Department, but the amazing thing is after these sometimes horrific, always challenging, always emotional incidents that you're going to hear about, these officers finished their shift, got in that locker room, took off that uniform, closed that locker, went home, and prepared to do it again the next day. Because this is every day to them. And you're going to hear some things that may not have happened to them before and may not have happened to them since. But they are ready to do it every day. And that is a remarkable characteristic that I think is unique to only a few people. And I am lucky to be the leader of 10,000 of those people. Also today, you will see us award medals. And if you're sitting next to a Los Angeles police officer, that individual may be wearing medals. And I have a personal preference not to wear the few that I have, but that's a personal preference. And those medals are a symbol of not only what they've done, but of what the organization values. What the organization values is what the organization does. And when we give Preservation of Life Awards, when we give Purple Hearts out, and especially the Medal of Valor, these are the values of this organization. And when you look at police officers and you see what they wear, that expresses their values. I do it in a little different way for personal reasons. Because I am the leader of this great organization, I don't think it's appropriate to think about or to recognize the things that I've done personally, because first of all, they're insignificant, and second of all, as a leader, it's about them, it's not about me. So the things on my uniform represent other heroes. And the first thing is my nameplate. My nameplate is my father's nameplate. My father served in World War II, was Los Angeles police officer for 30 years, and he is a hero to me, so I wear his nameplate. And so when I look at that nameplate, I think of him. And I also think of my children who are police officers and how heroic I think that they are. When I put this badge on, this badge was given to me by Chief Rock, and it was given to Chief Rock, who was an acting chief of police for Los Angeles Police Department, by Daryl Gates, who also wore it. And when I look at the badge, I think of all the heroic actions, sometimes physical, sometimes emotional, sometimes very personal, that police chiefs before me have had to make. And I think about that heroism. Then, when I put this pistol in the holster every day, I think about somebody that made the ultimate sacrifice. I think about R.J. Caudill, who died in Afghanistan while a reserve Marine and an active duty Los Angeles police officer. And this is the pistol that he carried and was given to me by his widow. And so I think about the sacrifices that R.J. made, that his family makes every day, that his daughter will make for her entire life because of his service to Los Angeles Police Department and this great country. So medals are important, and these medals that we give out today are very important. but it's also important to remember how great the sacrifice is of the others, those who we don't specifically recognize today, those that sit at the tables in support, those who are working the black and whites today, and those who are working the black and whites tomorrow. So thank you all for being here. God bless every one of you, and God bless the Los Angeles Police Department.
Look to your right, look to your left at your tables. You'll see that this ballroom is filled with LAPD officers, men and women in blue who selflessly put themselves in harm's way day in, day out to ensure the safety of others. They're faced with life and death situations where they must rely on their training, courage, and a little thing called intuition to make split-second decisions under varied and often extremely dangerous circumstances. Don't believe it? Take a look at the screens.
My name is Oscar Cordoba. I have a little bit over 14 years on the job. At the time of the incident, I had just over 10 years. I was working with Officer Brian Wagner at Southwest. We were assigned to the University Park Task Force, which is a crime suppression detail around USC. A radio call came out of a shooting just occurred. While en route, a second call came out of a shooting in progress. So that's when we initiated our code 3 response. As we're responding, I heard a patrol unit receive the call and start responding as well. That was Officer Rocha and Officer Marin. We were the first unit at scene, and we started being flagged down by a lot of witnesses that were in the area, and as we got out of the car, they started directing us over to the house where the incident occurred. Rocha and Marin pull up, and as they get out of the car, we hear a shot being fired coming from the backyard. From where we were standing, I could see the suspect walking across the backyard, formed a team together. As we went up the driveway, we would lose the suspect, we would lose sight of him. We entered the backyard, we fanned out kind of in a horseshoe formation. There was really no cover, so we drew our firearms. The suspect, he was tunnel vision and couldn't hear us, or wasn't responding to our commands. He walked along the side of the house. There was a back house, and he walked along the side of that back house to where we lost sight of him for a second. He popped right back out, and when he came back out, that's when we were able to see the gun in his hand. Again, we gave him commands to drop the gun, and again, no acknowledgement, no response. Not even looking at us. So in my mind, I was thinking like, man, what's wrong with this guy? Maybe there's, I had never encountered someone so maybe focused on one task that he just blocked everything else out. And his task, what he was out set to do was to kill his wife. He gives us his back as we're giving him commands to drop the gun. He peeks into the house through a window, and he fires around into the house. We are still, again, giving him commands to drop the gun. He comes down, his gun, he kind of blades himself off to the side. Gun in hand, he has a malfunction. He clears his malfunction, and that's when he turns his attention towards us. That's when he realized we were standing there. So then once that eye contact was made and he realized the police are here, it was a different look on his face. That's when he turned the gun towards us. And when he did that, it was almost simultaneous that we all fired at the same time. We knew that at that point it was an immediate defensive life. I remember calling a ceasefire, having the team stop. He went down, and then I, directed us forward. As we took a couple steps towards him, there was still movement. Gun was still in hand. So again, we gave commands to drop the gun. Instead, he rolled over onto his left side, pointed the gun back at us one more time, and then there was a second string of fire. Another few more rounds, and then the suspect stopped moving. We were able to approach, kick the gun out of his hand, and we took him into custody at that point. Once he was removed from the house, we made entry into that back house. His wife had been shot once in the back of the head, just behind the ear, and was laying face down in a pool of blood in the bathroom. She lived. I was actually at home when I got an email saying, "Hey, congratulations, you're going to be receiving the Medal of Valor at this year's Above and Beyond ceremony." I've never been one for medals or awards or anything like that, and it really hasn't hit me as to how big of an honor it is to receive it. There's some names on that wall that just I always admired and looked up to, and to be recognized and put in that same category, it's just, for me, it's it gives me goosebumps. It's a really big honor. I'm really proud of my profession, my job, and to have to be bestowed this award. It's special to me. It's really special to me, and I'm glad I have the opportunity to share it with my family, my friends, my partners. I'm glad for the people that I was working with that day. I'm glad that everything turned out the way it did, and we all went home that night.
We've learned the crash happened as a Mercedes and a Dodge Challenger heading east on MLK collided with the Metro bus that was heading west on MLK as the bus turned south on Western Avenue. The bus was not in service. The driver suffered head and neck injuries. There were moments of chaos and disbelief, followed by adrenaline-fueled need to help.
A fiery crash after a black Mercedes plows into the side of a Metro bus in South LA, possibly the result of a street race. A male driver and female passenger become trapped inside their Mercedes as flames begin to engulf the vehicle. These two officers were the first on scene.
My name is John Carlyle. Been on LAPD now for 15 and a half years. At the time that this happened, I was on about a little over 14 years. Currently assigned to Southwest Patrol Division. What happened that day was just kind of like any other day. I was working with a probationary officer.
My name is Garrett Brooks, 26 years old. I've been on with LAPD for just over 2 years. Currently assigned to Newton Division. At the time the incident went down, I was a probationer out of Southwest Division. I had maybe 5 months on. It was my 5th DP. I was working with a new TO.
We left out of the station after completing a report and just happened to be in the intersection right by the station, and we heard this kind of like what sounded like an explosion.
I mean, it literally, you could hear it from blocks away.
We looked down Martin Luther King towards Western. We saw a bus, one of the sectional buses, in the middle of the intersection with a plume of black smoke coming from the center of it. My first thought was, oh no, something serious is happening. I didn't know if it was somebody tried lighting off a bomb or if the bus had some kind of malfunction that caused it to explode or anything.
So we immediately started driving towards it, and all I could see was smoke and a bunch of people inside the intersection. As we got closer, it just seemed like chaos. Like everybody was screaming, and everybody's in the middle of the street.
We get into the intersection, we see this black, what we couldn't tell was a Mercedes at the time, had hit literally right in the center of where the accordion section is of that bus. We exited our vehicle, we ran over. I took a quick look at the bus as we were running up and saw that there was nobody in it. There wasn't even a driver in it at that point. Come to find out that it was actually an empty bus, that the driver was returned back to the bus station to get maintenance done. So that was something that was really thankful that was the case. When we ran up to the car, I could see the driver, the male, sitting there in the driver's seat, staring at the windshield, but just lifeless. I couldn't even see him breathing. There was no reaction out of him. I could see his legs were on fire. I could hear screaming from inside the car, and I knew it wasn't from him. We only had seconds to kind of basically give a quick assessment of it.
And the whole front end of the car is just engulfed in fire. We're trying to get these people out. I mean, obviously they were hurt and they were in trouble.
I couldn't see past the driver because of the flame and the smoke inside the vehicle, but I could hear the screaming. So I opened up the back door and actually I couldn't see anything, so I reached in, actually sticking my body into the car, ran my hand through the back seat and on the floorboard to see if there was somebody in there. I came out and went around to the passenger side, and that's when I actually saw the female in the passenger seat. And it was kind of hard because the side airbag on the window was still deployed. It was completely inflated, because I tried moving it thinking it was deflated so I could move it like a curtain, and it was stiff. I couldn't move it. She was moaning and screaming in pain and saying help, and I could see that her knees were pinned by the dashboard, by the glove box.
There's fire everywhere. So my partner's cutting the airbag, trying to get that out of the way to help break her free, and the dash is just compacted all the way back to the seat almost, where she's just pinned. And then I can hear people screaming to get the driver out, get the driver out. I ran back to the driver's side. There was another civilian there that ran right next to me. We started working to get the seatbelt off of me, still buckled in. And then as I'm trying to get the seatbelt off and cut and remove so we can pull him out, I can hear him almost exhale. And I'm like, oh my God, like this guy's still alive. So from then, I reach in, I start pulling him through the window. Same with the civilian, he's helping me, and as we get him out of the car, he just hands the feet to me, and I'm holding this guy, and he's just like looking at me, and he asks, like literally whispers with me, he's like, am I gonna die, under his breath. I told him, I'm like, nope, you're gonna be all right.
Thankfully, I was actually able to rip open the glove box enough and push it towards the center. And I think because the flames inside the car actually kind of helped, because it started melting the plastic. I was able to pull her out, and when I got her out, and I told her, I apologized, I said, this is probably gonna hurt, but I need to get you out of the car. And I told her, I said, reach in, reach around my neck, and I pulled her out through the window, where I looked over and I saw that they were coming clear of the car also. And I started to carry her, and another citizen came up, and I asked him, hey, help me grab her other side so we can cradle her, so it's not just me holding her and bouncing. We carried her over to the corner, the headboard, the seats, everything where we were at was completely engulfed, and it literally blew up not too long after, probably 5-10 seconds after we got them out. I'm not one for big shows. I'm not one for being in front of cameras. I'm not one for anything of that. It's a huge honor to receive the award. You do what you do to help somebody, to save somebody, to preserve that life and protect them. And that if it happened again, I would do it again. It's one of those things where it's just kind of a humbling experience.
When I found out that my partner and I were going to receive an award, of all awards, the Medal of Valor, that's the highest honor LAPD can give. I was shocked. I didn't expect anything like that. I would have never expected to get any type of recognition like that for just doing what we're supposed to do. I believe anybody else would have reacted that same way and just try to help. I feel very fortunate and honored to receive something like this, but definitely not expected.
On the afternoon of June 18, 2015, North Hollywood Division officers Grant Hansen and Brent Lamoureux responded to a radio call, man assaulting a woman. The officers got on the scene. They saw what they believed were the suspect and the victim walking on the sidewalk, the suspect's arm around the victim as if he was keeping her from moving away. The officers attempted to have that suspect stop when all of a sudden he wrapped his arm from around the waist up around the victim's neck in a chokehold grip, spun her around, and used her as a human shield. The officers immediately requested backup and continued to talk to the suspect in an attempt to de-escalate the situation. The suspect was having none of it. He retreated up a driveway as far as he could, not knowing if he was armed, only able to see one of his hands. The officers again requested help and reported this was now a possible hostage situation. As Hansen and Lamoureux waited, the victim looked like she was to the point of losing consciousness. Now, the officers only had tasers available as a lethal option. There's a problem with that. When you're in that close contact, you don't want to injure the victim as well as the suspect. They drew their duty weapons covered the man, demanding in loud voices, "Let the victim go." Officer Gabe Ahedo and Mark Pooler responded to the help call. Pooler came out and brought what he could, immediately, a less lethal shotgun, and he fired 3 rounds. That apparently convinced the suspect to, release the victim. In the martial arts, there's a technique. It's called grab one by the belt. Your opponent cannot harm you if you are at point-blank range. Lamoureux did exactly that, bear-hugging the suspect so he couldn't grab the victim again, and that he was effectively immobilized, while Hansen helped to take him on the ground and Officer Ahedo handcuffed him. For distinguishing themselves by employing exceptional tactics, exercising sound judgment beyond the normal demands of duty, to preserve the life of another during a volatile and dangerous encounter while protecting the safety and security of the public and their fellow officers, the Preservation of Life Medal is awarded to Officer Gabriel Ahedo. Unfortunately, Officer Ahedo could not be here today. He has the watch. Therefore, accepting the medal on his behalf is Paul Bobeck. Officer Grant Hansen. Officer Brent Lamoureux. And Officer Mark Pooler. Shortly before 1 o'clock in the afternoon on January 7, 2016, Metropolitan Division officers Michael Bertner and Saul Lopez were assigned to a crime suppression detail in Devonshire Division. And right in front of them, they observed a man crossing the street. The problem was, a "Don't Walk" sign was there. As the officers approached the suspect in their car, he looked back at them and walked right back across the street, committing a simple jaywalking violation. The officers got out of their car and told the suspect to stop. They walked to catch up with him. He wasn't in a mood to stop. He ignored their instructions, walked away, concealing a metal object in his hand. Officer Lopez radioed he was following a possible man with a gun and requested backup. The officers then drew their weapons in anticipation of the incident possibly escalating to one where deadly force might have to be used. As the suspect continued walking, he pulled out a large knife, raised his fist, yelled at the officers, "Well, there's an F involved, followed by U, and I'm not going to repeat that. You're going to have to shoot me." By now, the suspect was near a crowded restaurant and a parking lot, using parked vehicles for cover and aware in the restaurant windows of the background if they fired their weapons. The officers continued to follow him, and they continued ordering him multiple times, "Stop and drop the knife." The man neared the front door of the restaurant and picked up a large rock and threatened to throw it at the officers before he dropped it and then lunged toward Officer Lopez with a knife. Officer Lopez did what he could, stepping back to create more distance between himself and the suspect. They could all hear the sound of a siren that was quickly approaching, and the suspect decided at that point that it was time to run. Devonshire Division officers Heather Monroe and Joel Trask got into a foot chase with this man. The suspect, knife in hand, tried to climb a wall into a residential area. Officers again ordered him, "Drop the knife." His response, "Kill me. Kill me. You're going to have to kill me." Officer Monroe broadcast the position to an airship and other responding units as all 4 officers continued to run this man down. While Trask maintained lethal cover, Monroe fired her taser at the man, striking him and causing him to drop the knife. At that point, officers Monroe and Bertner handcuffed this man without further incident. When the crisis was over, in a subsequent interview, the suspect admitted his intention was to commit suicide by having the officers shoot him. He was booked for assault with a deadly weapon on police officers. These officers used exceptional tactics to take a suspect into custody without the use of lethal force that would have been justified, but preservation of life was in their mind. Therefore, the Preservation of Life Medal is presented to Officer Michael Bertner. Officer Heather Monroe. We have a little bit of a tragedy here on this one. Officer Saul Lopez. I mentioned the idea of a tragedy. Heather Monroe, a hero today, a hero that day, was killed in a car accident earlier this year. Accepting her award on her behalf is her father, Greg Monroe. Finally, Officer Joel Trask. On the morning of April 6, 2016, South Traffic Division officers Jesus Araguin and Manny Price were assigned to a radio call, traffic collision. When they arrived at the scene, the officers said, well, we've got a problem. 2 cars collided. Araguin obtained the statement of the victim and his family, and Price interviewed the suspect. Now, as the officers were waiting for a tow truck to arrive, that suspect, who previously had not indicated any frustration, any hostility at all, suddenly, without warning, pulled a knife and thrust it in a downward motion into the back of the victim's head. Officer Price immediately drew his weapon, pointed it at the man, and ordered him get back as the victim's family gathered around to help him. Fearing the suspect would attack again, Price ordered that suspect to drop the knife and get down on the ground while Araguin provided cover. The suspect eventually complied and was arrested for attempted murder. The Preservation of Life Medal is awarded to Officer Jesus Araguin. And to Officer Manny Price. May 14th, 2016, Van Nuys Division officers Miguel Alcantar and Stephen Bueller received a call about a man in Mission Division who was a possible gang member that just might be under the influence of narcotics and or, what could be worse, suffering from a mental illness and was therefore unpredictable. They were told the man was armed with a pipe and a rock and was breaking the windows of multiple cars. When the officers got to the location, they contacted the man and observed definitely he was armed. A 3-foot metal pipe in one hand and open knife in the other. He looked at the officers and immediately lost it. He raised both arms, screamed at the officers to shoot or kill him, and then began to approach them. Knowing that this man could hurt or kill either one of them, they used available cover and they gave themselves time to assess their options rather than immediately closing the distance and engaging the suspect. The suspect retreated, waited, before swinging the pipe in the air, hitting it on the ground, and yelling at the officers again to come get him, to come shoot him. He then pressed his knife into his neck and yelled, "Kill me." At this time, officers Derek Leaphart and Juan Sierra arrived at the scene, and the suspect ran in their direction, the suspect screaming, "Come kill me now." 4 officers took cover as the suspect put the knife on the ground and picked up a softball-sized rock, a deadly weapon. Fearing that he might throw that rock and strike them, Sierra warned the man loudly, clearly, he was going to shoot him with a beanbag shotgun if he didn't drop his weapons. The suspect apparently didn't get the message. He continued to threaten the officers. Sierra fired 2 less lethal beanbag rounds, and that stopped the man cold. It allowed the officers to take him into custody. As a result of the officers' decisions, the suspect only sustained minor injuries, bruises related to the beanbag rounds. The Preservation of Life Medal is awarded to Officer Miguel Alcantar. Officer Stephen Bueller. Officer Derek Liepart. And Officer Juan Sierra. July 14, 2016, a warm evening. Hollywood Division officers Eric Helmstetter and Daisy Venegas got a radio call. Attack just occurred on a woman by a man carrying a skateboard and a backpack. The officers got near to where the call came from and were told by witnesses that the man had fled. The officer saw a person who matched the description, approached him, ordered him to stop, turn around. This man ignored the officer's orders, walked back before turning back toward them, tilting his skateboard forward and looking if he was going to throw it at them. Now, the officers quickly realized this suspect intended to fight them. They warned him, don't do that, back up, back off, you're going to get hit with a taser. Again, he raised the skateboard and acted like he was going to use it, so both officers used their tasers. Unfortunately, even though the taser darts made contact with the suspect, they were ineffective. The man ran away from the officers, who began to run him down on foot. But during that foot pursuit, the officers saw this suspect grab a 4-year-old boy from behind and hold him in front as a hostage. The suspect placed the boy in a chokehold. They clamped the boy's throat. He was strangling, and the boy's eyes were rolling back. He was turning pale. He was bleeding from the mouth. Believing the boy's life was in imminent danger, the officers initiated a team takedown. The suspect fell on his back, but he did not release the boy's throat, not wanting to injure the child. With a taser, a baton, or a gun, Helmstetter decided it was time to use old-fashioned, old-style police work, a strike to the suspect's face with a closed hammer fist to distract him. His partner simultaneously hit him with a knee in the groin. Both officers grabbed and spread the suspect's arms apart to make him release the chokehold on the boy, which he did. The suspect was then taken into custody. The Preservation of Life Medal is awarded to Officer Eric Helmstetter. And Officer Daisy Venegas. Ladies and gentlemen, standing before you, the Los Angeles Police Department's 2017 Preservation of Life Award recipients. The following officers couldn't have foreseen the circumstances that would encounter them and bring them here today. Each of these officers gave an extraordinary sacrifice to help protect and serve. Listen carefully. March 21st, 1981. Van Nuys Division Officer Wayne Garber observed a vehicle weaving back and forth. He did a traffic stop. He ordered the driver out of the car. The driver was extremely belligerent, so he ordered the driver onto the sidewalk in an effort to conduct a sobriety test. The suspect ignored his commands, walked back to his car, removing something, and handed it to a passenger inside. Believing the situation might escalate, Officer Garber requested backup. The passenger then slid across the seat to the driver's side and started the engine. So Garber reached into the car, turned off the ignition, and grabbed the keys. And thinking this suspect was a threat, Garber drew the weapon and commanded him to turn around, place his hands behind his back. He then holstered his weapon before approaching him. But before that suspect could get both hands cuffed, he spun around, hit the officer in the nose with a loose handcuff, leaving him dazed. As Garber fell to the ground, he was unaware that his service pistol had dislodged from his holster and was on the street. The suspect jumped on top of the officer, began punching him in the face, and as Garber struggled to stop that attack, 2 construction workers saw by and saw what was happening. They pulled over. They came to the officer's aid. They threatened the suspect with a pipe and a sledgehammer if he didn't stop his attack. The suspect complied. The men completed handcuffing him and held him until additional units arrived. Officer Garber suffered a broken nose, a fractured jaw, lower back injuries from this attack. He returned to duty 6 months later, but eventually received a medical pension due to continued problems resulting from this attack. For sustaining traumatic physical injury during an on-duty tactical situation, the Purple Heart is awarded to retired Officer Wayne J. Garber. Accepting the award on his behalf, his son, John Garber. March 19, 2013, Pacific Division patrol officers get a radio call from a man who said that a male suspect was inside his mother's apartment, threatening to kill her and refusing to open the door. Officers arrived on scene, found the suspect had locked the door, barricaded it with furniture, and was now threatening to set fire to the apartment and kill the woman inside. Officers contacted Sergeant Joseph Morrison and requested the key to the city, otherwise known as a battering ram. While waiting for Morrison to arrive, the officers could hear the hostage repeatedly pleading with the suspect, turn off the gas, the natural gas that was filling the apartment. Within seconds of hearing those pleas, there was a fire that erupted in the front living room. Morrison arrived with a battering ram. The living room was fully engulfed in flames. He warned, or rather was warned, that the suspect was inside and he was armed with a knife. Several strikes with the battering ram broke the front door off the hinges, but there was a large amount of furniture blocking the door, as well as a dense cloud of smoke that came out. He pulled the items from the doorway and cleared the path, but the smoke was so dense he could only see a foot inside. Fearing the hostage would be killed, either by the suspect or from the fire, Morrison entered that residence, and he was soon overcome by the smoke and flames, was forced to back off for a few seconds. Only a few seconds. He caught his breath. He tried several more times to go deeper into the living room to rescue the hostage, but each time was forced out by smoke, heat, and flames. Believing at any moment that hostage would be overcome or possibly die by the fire and smoke, he took an extreme tactical disadvantage, laying on the floor to crawl into the apartment. Unable to see, breathing toxic smoke, he was navigating his way through this apartment by feel when he found the suspect was crawling on the floor toward him. He grabbed the suspect's hands to pull him outside, but the suspect yanked free and said, "We're all going to die. I want us to die." On the verge of losing consciousness, Morrison grabbed the suspect, picked him up off the floor as he continued to struggle, and pulled him out of the apartment. Surrounding officers took that man into custody and were able to break the window of the rear bedroom and pull the victim out to safety. Sergeant Morrison got a rapid trip to the hospital, where he was treated for loss of consciousness, extreme smoke inhalation, and singed nasal passages. The Purple Heart is awarded to Sergeant Joseph Morrison. Ladies and gentlemen, the Los Angeles Police Department's 2017 Purple Heart recipients. It's been said, perfect valor involves doing without witnesses what you would do as if the whole world was watching you. The following officers we recognize today with the Medal of Valor. They found courage not in search of recognition, they did it instinctively. And we're so grateful they were there, all rising above and beyond the call of duty. For performing an act displaying extreme courage while consciously facing imminent peril and death, the Medal of Valor is awarded to Sergeant Joseph Morrison. August 20th, 2013. A woman was watering her front lawn when her estranged husband arrived and asked to come in for a cup of coffee. She didn't want to let him in. He responded by pulling out a .25 caliber pistol and shot her on the right side of the head, grazing her head and penetrating her ear. She grabbed her head, bent down, screaming, and he fired several more rounds at her. Fearing for her life, she ran down the driveway to a detached rear residence where her son lived and shouted, "Help! Help me, I've been shot." Her son let her in, closed the door, and called 911. The suspect, meanwhile, went to his car, reloaded his gun, and began walking back to that rear residence. While the son was on the phone with 911, he fired a round into the house. Communications Division broadcasting a shooting had occurred. Southwest officers Henry Marin and Edward Rocha went to respond, as did officers Oscar Cordoba and Brian Wagner. As Cordoba and Wagner arrived, a neighbor flagged them down to tell them someone was shooting in the rear yard. Something was going on. Marin and Rocha arrived, and the four officers formed up and tactically moved down the driveway toward the backyard. Now they could see the man over the fence holding a small semi-automatic pistol. They yelled at him numerous times, a simple, straightforward command: drop the gun. The suspect ignored the officers, turned toward the house, fired one round into the window. The officers could hear screaming coming from inside, and again ordered the suspect, drop the gun. Instead, this time he turned toward the officers and pointed the pistol right at them. In immediate defense of their lives, Rocha fired several rounds from his shotgun. Cordoba and Marin fired several rounds from their handguns. The suspect went down, but his pistol was still in his hand. He looked over his shoulder at the officers, rolled on his side, raised his arm, and pointed the pistol at them one more time. Cordoba and Wagner fired their weapons. The man dropped the gun and rolled onto his stomach. Officers were then able to approach, handcuff him, and recover the weapon. It took me a little over 2 minutes to explain this. Video and audio evidence from the scene revealed that from the time the officers arrived on the scene to the end of the shooting and the cuffing of this suspect was just 49 seconds. For distinguishing themselves by conspicuous bravery and heroism above and beyond the normal demands of police service, the Medal of Valor is awarded to Officer Oscar Cordoba. Officer Henry Marin. Officer Edward Rocha. And Officer Brian Wagner. September 8, 2015, 77th Street Division officers Rudy Ledesma and Ramon Lomeli responded to an assault with a deadly weapon and then / domestic violence call, something that is extremely dangerous on its face. The person reporting requested the officers because her husband had threatened to kill her and had written a suicide letter. The officers were given a description of the suspect and his car and were told he owned a gun, but it was unknown if he personally was armed. As the officers continued to drive toward the scene, they rapidly received updates from Communications Division, letting them know the suspect was in his car, had mental illness, and most important, that his revolver couldn't be located inside the residence. When they hit the scene, they saw the suspect's car and illuminated it using exterior spotlights, but didn't see anyone inside. They got out of their car and then heard arguing coming from the front porch of the residence, and they tactically deployed on the location. But as they made their approach, multiple gunshots came from the porch and there were muzzle flashes. The gunshots were directed toward the front door. The suspect was in the process of trying to murder his wife. While O'Malley ran toward the front hood of the suspect's car for cover, he heard additional gunshots, saw muzzle flashes coming from the suspect, still standing on the porch. Simultaneously, Officer Ledesma took cover, heard the suspect scream loudly, and then raised his right arm toward him and his partner. The man turned his attention toward officers with a handgun in hand to save the life of the victim, as well as their own. Both officers fired their weapons. They stopped firing when the suspect went down to the ground. However, they were unable to determine if he'd actually been hit by gunfire. Officer Ledesma broadcast the call that no one wants to hear. Officer needs help, shots fired, and indicated the direction he wanted officers to approach in order to ensure their safety as they arrived. Officer Lomeli broadcast the suspect was down and that there was an additional victim, possibly injured, possibly seriously injured, inside the residence. Backup arrived. A tactical plan was put together in a matter of seconds to approach the suspect and to rescue the woman inside the house. The arrest team contacted that suspect and saw the gun lying right next to him. While that was happening, the rescue team went in, got the woman who'd been shot. The suspect was pronounced dead at the scene. The Medal of Valor, awarded to Officer Rudy Ledesma. And Officer Ramon Lomeli. March 28, 2016, Southwest Division officers Garrett Brooks and John Carlyle just started the watch. They were literally in the driveway of the station leaving when they heard a loud explosion. They saw a plume of smoke coming from an intersection and rapidly drove over and saw that they had a problem, a 5-car collision. A Mercedes-Benz had struck an MTA bus. Both vehicles were immobilized, and the Mercedes was already on fire. The driver and the passengers seat buckled inside and incapacitated by the impact. They could do nothing to help themselves. Both officers rushed in, regardless of the fact the car was on fire, to remove the occupants of the Mercedes. Brooks radioed for help. Carlyle assessed the situation and directed Brooks to remove the driver while he went to get the passenger. Carlyle opened the door behind the passenger, tried to take her out of the car, but she was still belted in and couldn't move. He smashed open the window with the handle of his knife, cut the seatbelt, but she still couldn't be taken out. Both her legs were pinned by the crumpled dashboard. By this time, smoke and fire were through the firewall of the Mercedes and filling the front passenger compartment. Carlyle went into adrenaline overload, ripping away part of the dashboard to free her legs. She was freed from her seat and carried away from the fire with the help of an unknown citizen. On the other side, Officer Brooks was attempting to remove the driver, again, who still had his seatbelt on, could not move, and whose legs were engulfed by fire. They were burning. He was dying. A citizen of the scene used Brooks' knife to cut the seatbelt so that Brooks could pull the driver out from the window. They carried that driver away from the fire, and at that point, the bus itself added to the chaos by catching fire, and the natural gas tanks on top became engulfed in flames and exploded. Most people would have run. Anything to get away from the flames. These officers did not. They did what came instinctively. In their minds, my life, my safety is expendable. I will shield those who cannot protect themselves, and that's what they did, using their bodies to shield both the occupants from the blast and debris. Officer Carlyle moved the car to use as a shield against the fire and further explosions. The officers carried both behind the car, comforted them, and stayed with them until LA Fire Department paramedics arrived and helped to treat them. Mild smoke inhalation, abrasions, lacerations. But these officers' heroic actions saved 2 people's lives. The Medal of Valor is presented to Officer Garrett Brooks. And to Officer John Carlyle. June 15th, 2016, nighttime. Central Traffic Division Sergeant Jesus Garcia and another officer heard and almost felt the impact from a traffic collision occurring a block away. It was that violent. As the officers looked toward the direction of the accident, there was a motorcycle involved, and that cycle was already in flames. Garcia broadcast the incident to nearby units. He drove quickly to assist the people who were involved, and when he got there, both the motorcycle and the motorcyclist were lying in the street, fully engulfed in flames that were 20 feet high and growing. Garcia ran toward the motorcyclist in an attempt to pull him away with the wreckage, but because of the intensity of the flames, he almost could not do it. Fully aware of the danger he was facing, he reconstituted himself in a second and then ran toward the burning wreckage, grabbing a hold of the motorcyclist's legs and manually pulled him to safety. While he's doing that, the flames were licking at him. He sustained first-degree burns to his hands and his face. Garcia and the other officers who arrived on the scene stripped off his smoldering clothes and backpack, cleared the motorcyclist's airway, and assisted him until paramedics arrived. Facing fiery death is something no one wants to consider. And for this, the Medal of Valor is awarded to Officer Jesus Garcia. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Los Angeles Police Department's 2017 Medal of Valor recipients. The brave are led by leaders, by commanders with authority, with courage in their own right. But sometimes they need to be reminded of who is there and who faces death and stares it down. 900 years ago, in the army of Genghis Khan was such a commander, a man of bravery, incredible bravery, named Yasute. He was so committed to his men, so committed to their survival, so impassioned that literally his warriors would fight each other to be in his company and to fight alongside him. Yasute's actions and valor was recognized by the Khan, and he was given a promotion to a higher rank. Yasute threw it away, staring at his leader, his king, and said, "You do not need, and I do not need another higher rank, but you need to be reminded in the desperate hour, at a critical time, remember 40 chosen men can shake and save the world." Ladies and gentlemen, today you've seen 27 of them. A round of applause for those heroes here. These officers we recognize here today took the oath to protect and to serve the city of Los Angeles. Their stories, going above and beyond the call of duty, have earned them a place among the heroes and legends of the LAPD. In a way, you've given me a rare privilege. I have assumed the role, as they said in Africa over 2,000 years ago, of the griot, the teller of tales, the keeper of legends, who speaks aloud the names of the brave to make sure they are never forgotten and that people learn from their lessons. Thank you for letting me do that, and thanks to all of you for coming here to honor them and for supporting the Los Angeles Police Department.